That's the way to go.
Yeah.
About who I am?
What brings you, all right, so what brings you to write a book about Bridgeville, California?
I'm Jessie Wheeler, and I am helping Virginia with this book about Bridgeville history. And I think it's important because Bridgeville was a center of a lot more than most people know.
I'm Virginia Howard Mullen, and I've loved writing since I was a little girl. And then, but you know, when you get older, you have to like make a living and do stuff. And so I got a job out of Bridgeville School in 1984 and ended up working out there 31 years. And remember, we met because, well, you were my boss kind of, right? Because you were on the board.
School board, yeah.
The school board out there. Evelyn wrote a book on Bridgeville history. And there were people that had lived in the town for a long time, like Philo Barnwell and Gloria Barnwell and Jessie Wheeler, and myself, who looked at that book and said, there's some stuff that's wrong in here, and we can't let it pass. I cared about how my name was spelled. Anyway.
Well, it's as I understand it from her daughter, most of the research was done from newspapers, which is not always the most reliable source of information.
Well, and there's something about Bridgeville that it has this allure to it. Not just that it was sold on eBay, which it never was, but a lot of people say that to me first thing. So Evelyn taught out there, 4 years? And it just so captivated her heart that when she was in her late 80s, 90s, she wanted to write a book about it. And Audrey, kind of the same thing, except a smaller project.
She came there when she was like 6 years old from Hayfork, and her parents ran the hotel for a short period of time, and then they moved up to the Josiah Drinkwater's ranch, who was a pioneer out there too, and is buried in the cemetery.
People end up being out of Bridgeville for a very short period of time, and there's something about the place. And so Jessie and I thought that there hadn't been a comprehensive work on it, and Jessie knows more about the mills and about the people and the post office and the general store, and I knew more about the school, and I was researching other aspects like the property that changed hands and so forth. But the school part got so big that we had to pull it out of the book because
it's a book in itself. It became a book.
It became a book. So this used to be a chapter in our book, but it's on its own. It's 182 pages. Yeah, we're not doing that. Our book's more like a 270-page book with just like 6 pages on the school, which is a more appropriate.
There should just be 1 page that says refer to.
Yeah, well, you know, once you do something like this, all of a sudden other stuff comes to light. And the thing that's different about the books I put together is I like to do it from the perspective of the people that were there. So you have lots of quotes from people that lived the experience, and sometimes you have people that have opposite opinions because not everybody thinks the same thing happened in the same way. What do you think's been the most fun part about it, or about putting the information together?
Well, I knew a lot of bits and pieces that are now much more expanded. And I knew these because my great-grandparents were there, and that information was passed on to my grandparents and on to my mother, and then from my mother to me, and I didn't pay as much attention to her as I really should have.
One of the things I loved about doing this project is a lot of it we did around Jessie's kitchen table. And I'd go over there and then she'd be pulling out bills of sale from 1912 or letters written to her grandfather about what to drop off in the mail at their house.
Well, the mail thing is really interesting because it shows the contrast between people then and now as far as trust and honesty goes. The mail was delivered every other day out to, all the way out to Ruth. And it came in these big canvas mail bags. And in those mail bags, there would be notes and money from the people who, they would get their mail, and then they would take it to home, and then they would put notes and they would put money in. And the notes would say, Henry, I have an account, put $5 on the account, send me 5 pounds of flour and a sack of beans and send the rest back in a money order for me. And enclosed was their paycheck or whatever check they had. They just send it just like that. I mean, there was no security, nothing, just the mailman.
Well, and they'd ask them for like vegetables and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, vegetables. Are you going to get potatoes? I want 100 pounds if you do. Just stuff like that. And the mailman would take all this stuff out and drop it off on the way. But the thing that really always impressed me was that these people trusted, so much. This is one of the post office boxes from the original post office. This post office would have been from 1921 because the original post office burned in the hotel. So this was left after they tore down the store, and it was a whole bank of these doors, and they each have their own combination.
Yeah, and I changed the combination, so it's not the combination on the bottom anymore. That's why the door's not shut, because I thought you might have something to say about this too.
This?
The Bridgeville Community Center.
Oh, the Bridgeville Community Center, but I didn't have anything to do with these cups. I wasn't happy about these cups.
Well, there you go. Little did you know I had one.
Well, I don't.
Oh, hey. A gift from me to you this very day.
Oh, the community center. Okay. Well, when they started that idea, I was all for it. I was 100% for it because at the time it was started, Bridgeville was not a community. It was in very sad shape. It was purchased from people from LA, and along with the purchase came drugs and a lot of other really ugly things that really destroyed the town. The original people all moved out, and it was just a sad thing, and there was no community. So when the California Healthy Start program had these grants to start community centers, I was 100% for it. Yeah. So
it was through the Bridgeville School.
Yeah, through the Bridgeville School. And so I joined up with all the other people who were interested, and it has become a really successful community center. And Bridgeville Community Center was able to create funds and to find ways to finance this community center, and the Bridge Fest is one of them. There was a mill in Bridgeville, and it had a pond, and it was only a few hundred yards from the school. And, the days of OSHA were not then, because there wasn't even a fence around this pond. It was just a big, huge log pond. And when the trucks came in to unload the logs, the teacher would let us out on the deck because it was quite a sight. You see them rolling logs off a truck into the pond. It splashed all the way across the pond. I mean, it was a huge thing. So the kids are going to try to get to the window anyway, so Mrs. Fowler just let us go out on a porch and watch them dump. And in those days, the trucks didn't have cradles on them like they do now. They have those big spike things on the side that hold the logs in. Not then. It was just chain binders. So they'd just undo the chain binders and off they'd roll. And then, of course, we watched the pond men. You could always see the pond men, the guys who were out there with cork boots and PV poles, and they were rolling logs because they had to roll these logs all the time to get them soaked good.
Okay, you told about 6 different versions of this, but the PG&E people that used to stay with your mom and growing up with all these men in your house.
I was 13 before we had electricity. And prior to that time, they had to survey the lines from Shasta over to here in order to build it. So the surveyors in the summer would stay board with my mom. We had a 2-story old farmhouse with 5 bedrooms. And they would board with us during the summertime. And I tell you, that was a kick because those guys were between, maybe 19 and 25 years old at the most. They were young guys. And so they'd be out working all day, and then they would come in and go down swimming at night across the river. My mom would get up and cook breakfast there would be at least 7 of them and 4 of us. So that's 13 people? She'd cook breakfast for them every morning. She'd pack huge, big grocery boxes full of sandwiches and lunch for them and thermoses. And then she would go to work at the post office in the store helping my grandpa.
Well, and there was a dance hall out there in Bridgeville, and there was a cinema out in Bridgeville.
There was a dance hall that served as a cinema.
That's why we keep her around, so you keep me straight.
had screens, and he had a movie projector, and he rented movies from Hollywood. And that's some of the letters that Virginia's seen that I have. His letters requesting certain movies, returnees of movies, etc. And we would be so happy when there was 2 reels, because that meant we had a really long movie. They were the big reels, from the old-fashioned movie stuff. And somebody would always make popcorn, and Grandpa would always let us see the cartoons over again at the end. He'd play them over. And they had movie tone news, too. That's how I saw Princess Elizabeth get married. In I think mid-50s, the CDF moved from up by Little Larrabee Creek down to directly across from the house where I lived, on a place that my grandpa sold to them. And they built a new station there, a big brand new station. Well, it took a while to build that station, a couple of years. And every summer there'd be this whole batch of new firefighters would come up to stay. And of course, all the girls in town were like, oh my God, there's a whole new fresh batch of guys. So I could see this from my house. So I would get a hold of everybody as soon as they showed up, say they're there, and we'd go down to the beach. So one day I saw a whole line of guys working over there. So I called a friend, and they called a friend, and the whole telephone tree worked. And we all bounced down there in our swimsuits, we're all about 15, 16 years old. And next thing we knew, the ranger up there came roaring down the beach and told us, get off that beach and get home. I'm going to call all your parents and you're going to stay home and you're not coming down here till next week. Well, that was a what? Well, what we found out was it was a prisoner crew. Our parents were horrified. Here's all these young girls dancing down the beach in front of these guys who've been in prison for years.
Yeah. There was an old wooden bridge in Bridgeville. Maybe you could say something about that.
The first wooden bridge, and then that was taken out by a big flood, a really bad flood, and a little boy was killed in that particular episode.
The Hale boy.
The Hale boy. He's buried in the Bridgeville Cemetery. And then they built a second wooden bridge. And the pictures of that show, they use a kind of a new technique on it. They have an arch underneath you can't see it until they were tearing it down. But they built this arch that made it stronger. Anyway, in 1925, they took that bridge down and put up the cement bridge, my grandma called it.
Well, and it was a new technology developed by
John Leonard.
And it was reinforced concrete. It was a new technology that he was really interested in after the fall of San Francisco. John Buck Leonard engineered a lot of bridges, including the Ferndale Bridge in Ferndale, California. And this is the 100th anniversary of the Bridgeville Bridge. So, another story that I love is, how did a tree save the store?
1921. When you drove into Bridgeville, on your left-hand side, there was a big 18-room hotel. And right there at the entrance was a huge, huge oak tree that overhung a whole section of those buildings. Well, when the hotel burned...
Maybe we need to know the month.
December.
It was cold.
Yes, it was frozen. And they couldn't fight the fire because there was no water. So the hotel burned, and the store burned, and the barn burned, the big livery stable burned. But those other buildings under that oak tree didn't, because there was icicles on the oak tree, big icicles on the oak tree, and they melted. And they dripped on the roofs, and the flames, or the cinders, couldn't catch on the roof because it was wet from that oak tree, which stood there for many, many years afterwards.
Yeah, and that's the part of the old town that people really recognize as Bridgeville, is where the post office still is. It's part of that the tree saved, the oak tree saved. Tell us about Walt Mendenhall.
Walt Mendenhall started delivering mail out there in 1945 or 46, right after he got out of the Air Force after World War II. But he brought ice cream out for the store. He brought milk out for the school. He brought orders out for Dinsmore store, Ruth's store, Mad River store, in addition to the mail. So he was an absolute fixture out there. And he was absolutely on time all the time. He never missed a beat. He was an amazing man. And one of the funny things he ever said to me was, I asked him one time, did he have air conditioning? Because it was so hot out there. He says, yeah, I do. He says, it's called WD-90. I said, what does that mean? He said, windows down, 90 miles an hour.
The cash box. Tell me where that cash box came from your house.
The wood one?
The wood one.
Oh, well, that's from the post office. And it's a beautiful oak, but it was used in the Bridgeville post office because it locked. It had a little wood door that opened up, and then you could pull the drawers out, and you'd shut it and locked it, and it was secure.
Right, it's got drawers for the money, drawers for the stamp, things that, and it's even got a secret compartment that I showed my son. I said, check this after I die.
That's right.
Maybe I'll leave you
I told
something.
you that my mother left me money in that drawer.
Oh, did she?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I was the only one that knew about the drawer.
Well, we're putting a book together, and so we just told you some of the stories. Some of these stories are in the book, some of them aren't, but they're stories from other people. This is just a little taste of what's going to be in Bridgeville, the history of Bridgeville. Everywhere I go and I mention Bridgeville, and people go, oh, the town that sold on eBay. And the reality is, the town didn't sell on eBay. I'm talking about, I'll be in Chicago, and somebody will say, where did you teach? They'll come up, I taught at Bridgeville. Oh, they've heard about it. People in San Diego have heard of Bridgeville. They haven't heard of Densmore. They don't know about Fortuna. They might not even know where Eureka is. But they'll say, oh, Bridgeville, that's that town that sold on eBay. I mean, that tells you the power of media. It's just been a joy to talk to Jessie, hear her stories, talk to other people. It gives, that you're talking about that social part. It gives me a reason to interact with some people that I wouldn't have interacted with otherwise. Asking them questions about when they were young or what they remember about this or that.
Well, I feel like when my mom sold the town in 1976 and it fell apart so badly, for me, it's always been really important to tell the story of how it really was.
Prior to 1976.
Prior to 1976, what a real town it was.
And touched by the beauty. It's such a beautiful place.
It is. I remember telling the kids a couple of different times when I'd come in and talk to them about Bridgeville that they were living in a postcard. I said, most people in your life will never have seen this kind of landscape or this kind of country ever. They'll only see it in postcards.